breathing and exchange of gases. As you have read earlier, oxygen is utilized by organisms to indirectly break down simple molecules like glucose, amino acid, fatty acids, etc. to derive energy to perform various activities. Carbon dioxide CO2, which is harmful, is also released during the above catabolic reactions. It is therefore evident that O2 has to be continuously provided to the cell and CO2 produced by the cell have to be released out. This process of exchange of O2 from atmospheric with CO2 produced by the cell is called breathing, commonly known as respiration. Place your hand on your chest. Place your hand on your chest. You can feel the chest moving up and down. You know that it is due to breathing. How do we breathe? The respiratory organs and mechanisms of breathing are described in the following section of this chapter. Mechanism of breathing vary among different groups of animals depending mainly on their habitats and level of organisms. Lower invertebrate like sponges, coelacanth, flatum, etc. exchange O2 with CO2 by simple diffusions. Mechanisms of breathing vary among different groups of animals depending mainly on their habitats and level of organization. Lower invertebrates like sponges, coelacanth. Lower invertebrates like sponges, coelacanth, flatum, etc. exchange O2 with CO2. Lower invertebrates like sponges, coelacanth, flatum, etc. exchange O2 with CO2 by simple diffusion over their entire body surface. Earthworms use their moist cuticle and insects have a network of tubes, tracheal tubes, to transport atmospheric air within the body. Special vascularized structure called gills. Specialized vascularized structure called gills, branchial respirations are used by most of the aquatic arthropods and mollusca, where vascularized bag called lungs, pulmonary respiration are used by terrestrial form of exchange of gases. Among vertebrates, fishes use gills, whereas amphibian, reptile, birds, and mammals respire through lungs. Amphibian, like frogs, can respire through their moist skin, cutaneous respiration also. Of okay, human respiratory system. We have a pair of external nostrils opening out above the upper limbs. The nasal chamber opens into pharynx. The nasal chamber opens into pharynx, a portion of which is common passes. Okay, the nasal chamber. It leads to nasal chamber through the nasal phages. The nasal chamber open into the pharynx. The nasal chamber opens into the pharynx, a portion of which is common phases for food and air. The pharynx open through the larynx region into trachea. Larynx is a cartilaginous box which helps in sound production and hence called sound box. During swelling of glottis can be covered by a thin elastic cartilaginous flap called epiglottis. Thin elastic cartilaginous flap called epiglottis to prevent the entry food into the larynx. Trachea is a straight tube extending up to the mid-thoracic cavity, which divides at the level of thoracic vertebrae into the right and left bronchiole. Epiglottis, larynx, trachea, pleural membrane, alveoli, pleural fluid, bronchioles. Bronchus, cut end of rib, lungs. Epiglottis, larynx, trachea, pleural membrane, alveoli, pleural fluid, bronchioles, alveoli, bronchioles, lungs, cut end of rib, bronchiole, diaphragm. This is oxygen dissociation curve. Okay, breathing. Okay, inspiration and expiration. Inspiration and expiration is called one breathing, external respiration, internal respiration. No, first is breathing, then external respiration, then transport of gases, then internal respiration, then cellular respiration. Breathing. Breathing on inspiration or expiration takes place. External respiration, external respiration. Exchange between deoxygenated blood and lungs. Exchange between deoxygenated blood and lungs. Transport of gases. Okay. Internal respiration, exchange between oxygenated and tissue. Cellular respiration. Okay. First breathing, external respiration, transport of gases, internal respiration, cellular respiration. External respiration, exchange of deoxygenated blood and lungs. Internal respiration, exchange between oxygenated blood and tissue. Cellular respiration. Respiration physiochemical process. Human respiratory system. Epiglottis, glottis. Larynx made up of nine cartilages. Okay, larynx made up of nine cartilages. Epiglottis, glottis, larynx. Larynx is also known as sound box. Larynx is also known as sound box, made up of nine cartilages. Diameter decreased down. First external nostril, then internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, initial bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, alveolar duct, and alveoli. External down. Diameter decreases down. External nostril, internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, transient bronchi, par, initial bronchioles, terminal bronchioles, alveolar duct and alveoli. External nostril, internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. Okay, conducting zone from external nostril to terminal bronchioles. Okay, conducting conducting zone from external nostril to terminal bronchioles. Cartilaginous ring is from trachea to initial bronchioles. Respiratory zone, alveoli and alveolar duct. Alveolar duct. Respiratory zones consist of alveolar and alveoli duct. Trachea divides at the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae. Trachea is supported by C-shaped incomplete cartilaginous ring. At the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae, trachea is supported by C-shaped incomplete cartilaginous ring to prevent the collapse of trachea. Outer, inner is visceral, outer is partial. Pleural, okay, prevent frictions, okay. Pleural membrane, okay. Prevent frictions. Breathing, it occur event of expiration and inspiration. Breathing, then exchange of external respiration, transport of gases, internal respiration, and cellular respiration. Human respiratory zone. Larynx, also known as sound box, made up of nine cartilaginous ring. External nostril, internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea, primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi, initial bronchiole, terminal bronchiole, alveolar duct, and alveoli. Okay, cartilaginous ring made up of from trachea to initial bronchioles, and conducting zone from external nostril to terminal bronchioles. Respiratory zone, alveolar duct, and alveoli. Trachea divides at the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae. At the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae, trachea is supported by C-shaped incomplete cartilaginous roll prevent the collapse of trachea. Lungs is made up of simple squamous epithelium. Lungs is made up of simple squamous epithelium. Lungs is made up of simple squamous epithelium. Function of conducting zone, bringing air up to respiratory zone. Bringing air up to respiratory zone, clearing the air, humidification of air, bringing the air up to body temperature. Bringing air up to body temperature, clearing the air, humidification of air, bringing the air up to respiratory zone. Okay. Bringing the air, okay, functions of conducting zone, bringing the air up to respiratory zone, bringing the air to up to body temperature, bringing the air up to body temperature, humidification of air, clearing the air. Function of respiratory zone, made up of simple squamous epithelium. Function of respiratory zone, made up of simple squamous epithelium. Diffusion and exchange of gases. Function of respiratory zone. Function of respiratory zone, diffusion or exchange of gases. Function of respiratory zone, diffusion or exchange of gases. Diffusion of gases depend on membrane thickness, inversely proportional, solubility directly proportional, and pressure gradient directly proportional. Okay, our lungs are solid and spongy with negative pressure. Our lungs are solid and spongy with negative pressure. Lungs can't directly alter the pulmonary volume. Thus, it's situated inside the airtight chamber, thoracic cavity. Thoracic cavity made up of dorsal side, vertebral column, ventral side, sternum, lateral side, ribs and lower side, dome-shaped diaphragm. Dorsal side, vertebral column, dorsal side, vertebral column, lateral side, ribs, ventral side, sternum, and lower side dome-shaped diaphragm, not abdomen. Okay. Class. In which of the following gaseous exchange between O2 and CO2 occur through general body surface? Sponges, flatternals. Arthrom, moist cuticle. Most of arthropods, gills. Fishes also gills maybe. Yeah. Birds and reptile lungs. Insect trachea. Amphibian example forks respine through skin and moist cuticle. Skin and through moist lungs. Okay. Amphibian example frog respire through moist skin and gills, lungs, not amphibian example frog respine through moist skin and lungs. Which of the following sequence external nasal phages, internal nostril, pharynx, trachea, pharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchioles, alveoli. Nasal phages. Lungs is made up of okay. Um, Which is correct about nasopharynx? Internal nostril open into nasopharynx. Internal nostril open into nasopharynx. It is the common phages for both air and food. Nasopharynx is common for both air and food. It opens through gullet of the larynx region of the trachea. Okay. Internal nostril open into nasopharynx. Nasopharynx. Nasopharynx is common for both air and food. It opens through gullet of larynx region into the trachea. Nasopharynx is common for both. Which of the following option is wrong about larynx? It is bony box, not bony box. Glottis is opening into the larynx during the swelling of food. Glottis is covered by epiglottis. Okay, it is bony cavity, no, maybe cartilaginous box. Larynx. It's open through larynx region into trachea. Larynx is cartilaginous box. Cartilaginous. Okay, trachea divides into right and left pulmonary bronchio at fifth thoracic cavity. Incomplete cartilaginous ring support all of the following except respiratory bronchioles. Incomplete cartilaginous ring, trachea, primary, second, tertiary bronchi, initial. Okay, which of the following has the smallest diameter? Terminal bronchioles. Lungs are comprised by network of bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli. Site of gaseous exchange in lungs are alveoli. Sites of gaseous exchange in lungs are alveoli. It is the okay pleura. Okay. The part starting with external nostrils up to the terminal bronchioles, conducting zone. Respiratory or exchange part of the respiratory system consists of exchange alveoli and their ducts. The part starting with okay all bronchioles, respiratory or exchange part, alveoli and alveoli ducts. The conducting part of the respiratory system has function of filter, warm and moisten the air. The chamber formed dorsally by the ventral vertebral column, ventrally sternum, laterally by ribs, and lower side by dome-shaped diaphragm is thoracic cavity. Sponges cylinder through skin, diffusion entire body surface. Aquatic arthropods exchanged by gills, insect, trachea, mammals, lungs. Air bladder is found in bony fish. Okay. Air bladder. Air bladder found in bony fish. Air bladder is found in bony fish. Skin of man cannot act as respiratory organ because it is dry, it is not thin, it is not permeable to O2 and CO2, all of the above. Okay, the conducting part that is from nostril to the terminal bronchioles of expiratory system perform all of the above. Choose the correct statement. Their air sac of bird insect, their respiratory efficiency increases. Air bladder, bony fishes. Choose the correct. The circulatory body fluid in insect help in O2 distribution in the tissue. No, I just pause. Sternum and ribs, ventrally and laterally. Ventrally sternum, laterally ribs. Like structure for exchange of gases. The respiratory organs varies in diameter animals due to their habitat and level of organization. Okay. The respiratory organs due to habitat and level of organization. Respiratory organs in aquatic arthropods like crayfish, prawn, and mollusca like unio are gills. Unio are gills. Diaphragm is dome-shaped muscular structure which separate abdominal cavity and thoracic cavity. Actual site of alveoli. Factor affecting the rate of diffusion is pressure. Okay, all of this. Friction on lung surface reduced by double layer pleura. Diffusion membrane is made up of thin squamous epithelium of alveoli. Diffusion membrane, thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, endothelium of alveolar capillaries, basement substance in between two, two mentioned above. Thin squamous epithelial of alveoli. Diffusion membrane is made up of thin squamous epithelium of alveoli. Diffusion membrane, thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, endothelium of vascular capillaries, endothelium of vascular or thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, endothelium of alveolar capillaries, endothelium of alveolar capillaries, basement substance. Larynx is present in between pharynx and okay, larynx is present between epiglottis and trachea. Pharynx, larynx, trachea. Larynx is present between epiglottis and trachea. Diffusion membrane is made up of thin squamous epithelium, thin squamous epithelium, thin squamous epithelium, thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, endothelium of alveolar capillaries, basement membrane between them. In mammals, voice is produced by larynx. Vocal cord is larynx. Opening of larynx into pharynx is got by epiglottis. Glottis is a passage for air and common features for both air and food is larynx is cartilaginous box which help in sound production. Pharynx or larynx trachea. The nasal membrane, a portion which is common. The nasal pharynx is common for both food and air. Pharynx. Pharynx. Both. Glottis is opening the floor of pharynx. Pharynx. Larynx is guarded by larynx into pharynx is guarded by okay. External nostril, internal nostril, trachea, larynx, pharynx. Not trachea. Okay. External nostril, internal nostril, pharynx, larynx, trachea. Glottis. Okay. Opening of larynx into pharynx is guarded by epiglottis, vocal cord, larynx. Okay. Glottis is an opening in the floor of pharynx. The lungs are protected with the help of rib sternum vertebral column, which is of the smallest diameter respiratory bronchioles. Lining of trachea is made up of lining of trachea, pseudostratified epithelium. Lining of pseudostratified epithelium. And lungs is made up of simple squamous epithelium. Simple squamous epithelium. Each terminal bronchiole gives rise to a number of very thin, irregular, walled and vascular bag-like structure called alveoli. Each Its terminal bronchioles give rise to a number of very thin, irregular, wall-like vascular alveoli. Epiglottis is made up of elastic cartilage. Epiglottis is made up of elastic cartilage. Lining of trachea, pseudostratified epithelium. Covering of lungs is called pleural membrane. Respiratory or exchange part of this respiratory system consists of alveoli. Okay, the part of external nostril, the terminal conducting part of respiratory zones. Epiglottis is made up of elastic cartilage. Epiglottis is made up of elastic cartilage. Lining of trachea is made up of pseudostratified. Lining of trachea is made up of pseudostratified epithelium. Lining of trachea made up of pseudostratified epithelium. Thoracic volume increases, pressure decreases, movement of air is from outside to inside. Thoracic volume increases, pressure decreases, movement of air from outside inside to outside. Pressure decreases. No. Thoracic volume increases, pressure decreases. Low, high to low. Movement of air from outside to inside. Thoracic volume decreases, pressure increases, movement of air from inside to outside. Mechanisms of breathing. It is the alternate contraction and relaxation of two type muscles. It is the alternate contraction and relaxation of two type of muscles: diaphragm or pharynx muscles and intercostal muscle. Two type: external intercostal muscle and internal intercostal muscle between ribs. Inspiration, contraction, active process. Inspiration, contraction, active process. Diaphragm, anterior posterior. External intercostal muscles, dorsoventral axis. Thoracic volume increases, pressure decreases, movement of air outside to inside. Okay, mechanisms of breathing. Mechanisms of breathing. It is the alternate concentration and relaxation. Contraction, not concentration. It is the alternate contraction and relaxation of two type of muscles. One is pharynx muscle or diaphragm. Other is one is pharynx or diaphragm. Other is intercostal muscles. Two type: external intercostal muscles and internal intercostal muscles. Inspiration, contraction, active process. Diaphragm, anterior posterior axis. And external intercostal muscles, dorsoventral axis. External intercostal muscle, dorsoventral axis. Thoracic volume increases, pressure decreases, movement of air from outside to inside. Expiration, relaxation. Diaphragm, relaxation and intercostal. Okay. Thoracic volume decreases, pressure increases, movement of air from inside to outside. External intercostal muscle area increases, dome shape, diaphragm, relaxation. Dome shape, relaxation. Area by Inspiration, contraction, active process, diaphragm, anterior posterior axis, external intercostal, dorsoventral, thoracic volume increases, pressure decreases, movement of air from outside to inside, thoracic volume decreases, pressure increases, movement of air outside to inside. Forceful breathing, internal extraconscious muscles plus abdominal muscles, contraction, thoracic volume decreases, relaxation, thoracic volume increases. On an average, human breathes 12 to 16 times per meter, can be measured by spirometer. Respiratory volumes, tidal volume 500 ml. Forceful breathing, internal intercostal muscles plus abdominal muscles. Contraction, thoracic volume decreases. Relaxation, thoracic volume increases. On an average, human breathes 12 to 16 times. Okay. On an average, human breathes 12 to 16 times per minute. Can be measured spirometers. Respiratory volume, tidal volume 500 meter of ml 500 meter. IRB 2000 to 2500 to 3000 ml. Expiratory 2000 1000 to 1100 ml. Reserve volume 1100 to 1200 ml. Spirogram tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume, residual volume can be measured by spirometer. Okay, A, inspiration. Pitorla is a that means inspiration. Bahyolego say expiration. Ribs and sternum return to original position. Ribs and sternum raised. Rib case. Okay, diaphragm contract. Diaphragm relax and arc upward. Volume thorax discrete. Okay, let's spell out. Diaphragm contracted. Ribs and sternum raised, rib case, volume and thorax volume of thorax increases, volume of thorax decreases, diaphragm relax and arc upward, ribs and sternum return to original position. Inspiration. Tidal volume, normal inspiration volume, normal inspiration, normal expiration. IRV. This is IRV. This is ERV. RV. Tidal volume. Okay. During inspiration, diaphragm and external contract. During inspiration, the diaphragm contract and flattens. Okay, contract and flattens. Expiratory involves relaxation of diaphragm and intercostal muscles. Arrange the following step: respiratory proper. Okay, breathing of pulmonary volume. Position O2. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Expiratory muscle contract at the time of forceful expiration. Expiratory muscle. Forceful. Okay. Which of the following statement is correct? Inspiration is an active process. Gaseous exchange between blood and alveolar air across respiratory membrane. Exchange between blood and alveolar air. Diffusions. Largest quantity of air that can be expired. Vital capacity. Functional residual capacity. Lung of alveoli, simple squamous epithelium. The amount of O2 normally carried by 100 ml of pure blood. 20 ml. How much oxygen is delivered to tissue by 100 ml of oxygen? 5 ml. Okay. How much? Normal hole 20 ml or tissue to under normal physiological conditions. 5 ml. Oxygen delivered to tissue. delivered to tissue হলে 5 ml আৰু carried normally carried হলে 20 ml. Erythrocytes RBC. The partial pressure of oxygen in alveoli of lung is more than that of blood. Okay, tidal volume can be measured. Normally carried 20 ml and O2 carried in normal physiological 5 ml. Inspired experts were alveolus, pulmonary vein, systematic artery, systematic vein, pulmonary artery. Heart originally artery, heart vein. Alveolar cavities, squamous epithelium of alveoli 1 still thick. Basement membrane, endothelium of blood capillary, red blood cell. Alveolus with pulmonary capillaries. 100 ml of blood, 1 gram of hemoglobin, okay. 20 ml of O2, 100 ml of oxygen carried, 20 ml of O. Normal conditions, 5 ml. Sterigarious condition, 15 ml. Excess O2 is stored in muscle. Okay, normal physiological condition of 5 ml and strenuous condition of 15 ml. Transport of CO2, 20 to 25% CO2 is transported in blood as carb aminohemoglobin. 20 to 25% CO2 is 20 to 25% CO2 is transported in blood as carb aminohemoglobin. 7% directly diffused into plasma. 70% CO2 in converted as bicarbonate in RBC but transported in through plasma. 25% CO2 is transported in blood as carb aminohemoglobin, 7% directly into plasma. 70% CO2 in converted as bicarbonate in RBC but transport in through plasma. Carb aminohemoglobin, carbonic anhydride, mostly in RBC, but some amount is also found in plasma. Transport of CO2, 20 to 25% O2 transport in blood as a carb aminohemoglobin by RBC. 20 to 25% of O2 transport in blood as carb aminohemoglobin by RBC. 7% directly diffused into plasma. 70% CO2. Oh no, it is not about O2, it is about CO2. 25% CO2 as carb aminohemoglobin by RBC, 7% directly diffused through plasma, and 70 to 70% CO2 converted into bicarbonate in RBC but transported through plasma. Bicarbonate, 70% transported into bicarbonate or through plasma. Transport of gases O2 and CO2 can transport through plasma RBC in association with hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin. O2 hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin, CO2 hemoglobin, carb aminohemoglobin, reversible binding. O2 plus hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin, carb aminohemoglobin. CO2 is 20 to 25 times more soluble than O2. Carb carboxyhemoglobin binding irreversible. More soluble than O2. Oxidation of hemoglobin occur. Methanoglobin, blue baby syndromes. Transport of gases O2, 2 to 3% O2 transport through plasma, 97 to 98% is transport RBC as a RBC or erythrocytes or oxyhemoglobin through RBC as oxyhemoglobin for O2 molecules. Association favorable condition lab size. Association association favorable condition shift left side Haldane effect. মই ভূমিকম্প আহিছে বহুত লৰিছে লৰি আছে নে হ'ল বাৰু বহুত জোৰছে লৈছিলে আকৌ Initially, when PO2 increases, binding of hemoglobin with O2 increases, but up to a limit saturation. Association shift left Haldane effect. Partial pressure of O2 increases, partial pressure of CO2 decreases, H plus decreases, pH increases, temperature decreases near lungs. H plus increases but pH decreases. Dissociation, unfavorable condition, right, left, right, shift right. Bose effect. PCO2 increases, PO2 decreases, H plus increases, pH decreases, temperature increases near tissue. 7% directly through plasma, 20 to 24 carb aminohemoglobin. Regulation of breathing, involuntary regulation, cerebrum, neural control, medulla oblongata, dorsal respiratory group, inspiratory area. Okay. Regulation of breathing, involuntary regulation, cerebrum, involuntary regulation, cerebrum. Regulation of breathing, involuntary regulation, cerebrum, neural control, medulla oblongata, dorsal respiratory group, dorsal respiration group, inspiratory area, dorsal respirational group, inspiratory area, respiratory rhythm center, control contraction of diaphragm and external intercostal muscle, thus control inspiration. Dorsal respiratory group, control inspiratory, controls inspiration. Ventral, dorsal control inspiration. Ventral respiration group, control expiration. Forceful, okay, controls forceful expiration. Expiratory area, ventral expiratory area controls contraction of internal intercostal muscles in controls forceful and abdominal muscles. Medulla oblongata, ventralot expiration or dorsalot inspiration. Pons, pneumatic center, act as a kill switch, reduce duration of inspiration by increasing breathing rate. Pons pneumatic center act as kill switch, reduce duration of inspiration by increased rate of breathing. Chemical regulation by chemoreceptor detect increased level of CO2. Chemical regulation. This is neural control. Neural control by medulla oblongata and pons. Chemical regulation by chemoreceptor detect increase of H plus and CO2. Increased level of H plus and CO2. Central, below medulla oblongata near the brain, detect increase of CO2 and H plus in cerebrospinal fluid. Carotid artery, aortic arc, detect increase of H plus in blood. In regulation of breathing, there is no role of O2. Okay. Neural pons and medulla oblongata dorsal hole inspiration, control inspiration or forceful expiration ventral hole. Pons act as pneumatic center, act as kill switch, decrease breathing by increased rate of inspiration. No, reduce duration of breathing by decrease rate of inspiration. No, reduce duration of inspiration by decreasing rate of breathing. Chemical regulation by chemoreceptor detect increased level of CO2. Peripheral and central below the medulla oblongata near the brain detect in cerebrospinal and peripheral carotid artery and aortic arc detect increased level of CO2 and H plus in blood. Periphery and central near brain detect H plus and CO2 increase in cerebrospinal fluid. Aortic arc and carotid artery detect increase of CO2 and H plus in blood.